Hi and welcome to Hitting Home. I'm here with Arif Khan and I'm Mike Montague. And today we have Samantha Hoffman, who is the Public Fire Life Safety Officer with Barrie Fire and Emergency Service. And we are glad to have you here with us today. This past week has been an interesting one. Last Monday, a week ago tonight, we had an unfortunate fire in Arif's ward at Bayview and Little Avenue. And I think it's left a lot of us thinking about our own safety in our own homes with regard to fire. And we just thought we would use this opportunity to make this show today about enlightening people on the various aspects of keeping our homes safe and keeping ourselves safe.
Well, thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely.
Yes. And before we even get into it, though, I want to touch on how amazed I was. I showed up at that fire about 20-25 minutes after it started at Bayview and Little, bumped into Arif, who was already there. He had gotten there a few minutes before me, and we were just awestruck, not only just by the devastation that was taking place, it was an immense fire, but just how quickly everything was professionally being handled. The firefighters were in place, and so many services were in there. And Arif and I both were, amazed at just the quality of professionals we have in the city and the preparedness we have at the professional level for dealing with something like this.
Well, I think you kind of summarized that, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah. So, your turn.
I think that's what all first responders train for,
Yes.
for people's worst day. And we work together with our partners in paramedics and Barrie Police. And when we show up, the training kicks in and everything that we've been working on for years comes together in a very, very short period of time.
Yeah.
So, if you will, our show traditionally has been on Hitting Home, has been about the home ownership process, about taking people through, having a great team of professionals around them to guide them. And I often reference the fact that, for many of us, we have a dentist, we have possibly a chiropractor, we have a medical team around us to ensure that we're in our best health. On our show, we like to talk about being eyes wide open going into a transaction and making sure you've got good people around you there. So we've had the benefit and the pleasure of having on home inspectors, realtors, heads of real estate association, the mayor talking about growth planning. We've talked about finances, etc. Today we thought it was a great opportunity to have you on board, so we thank you for coming in, really to talk about how to keep ourselves safe, what to look for, what you in the fire service see when you're out doing inspections, etc. So really, it's no better a time while this type of a topic is front and center in people's minds that we can get some really good professional advice. But the other thing that you mentioned, I think, is really valid, is that as a member of council that I'm currently a member of, we've heard the theory. We've heard, I've read the reports, we've discussed in principle what would happen in an event or a larger scale incident. But in my time, which is just over 5 years, I've never seen it actually roll out. I've never seen it executed. And Mike's absolutely right. I was personally awestruck to see the mix of communication, the effectiveness of the attack plan, the approach, but also the human side, the compassion.
The community response.
The community response as well, but also all of the agencies working together as one to ensure everyone was accounted for, to make sure the basic human needs were met, and, by the way, also to attack the fire. And maybe you can talk a little bit about how you typically respond when a call comes in. What's the assessment of dispatch? What's the assessment of the fire service as a lead organization?
So usually we can tell what type of call we're getting by the number of calls we receive. So the initial call comes in from maybe a passerby or somebody that's in the building or someone that's in the unit. Then a monitoring company if the building happens to be monitored. And then which is why we always want as much information as we can get. Anybody that's in the building, if you've left the building, call 911. Keep calling and giving us information. So that information is relayed to the firefighters as they are responding. And we have a really good response in Barrie. We're usually on scene within 5 to 6 minutes. And when we're arriving, we know exactly what we're pulling up to. We can see, particularly in this case, the flames and the smoke. So they were making a plan as they were driving to the call. And then when they get there, there's a safety officer, everything becomes a well-oiled machine, and everybody knows what their job is and does what they have to do to get things working.
Okay, so we are going to have some images of actual incidents here that we're going to be able to talk to, but in this particular one, I think obviously there's whether it's the incident commander or the first responding unit, I'm assuming gives back some information once they have eyes on the scene as to what else they might be requiring.
Right. When they're en route, if they're seeing a lot of smoke and flames, they're going to call for backup as they're driving so that we get more vehicles responding as quickly as possible.
Okay, so there wasn't a very coordinated response, and a fire of this magnitude is quite reasonably treated differently than a more isolated or a more contained fire if there's a chance of spreading into, in terms of the response that we got from all the other agencies involved, I guess.
From the other agencies, but from our standpoint, all fires start small. So we respond as if it can, because fires can get very big very fast, which you saw in this particular case. A house fire the entire house can be engulfed in flames in 3 minutes.
Right.
So we respond we're going to send more trucks when there's that big of a building and that many occupants, but we are going to respond the same way to any type of fire.
So let's talk about that just for a second, because I know you have a program that goes out to various places in the community. Sometimes it's the home improvement centers where you set up the trailer and you say, this is a house built in 1970s with natural materials, et cetera. This is a house built maybe more recently with a lot of synthetic or man-made materials, and how they respond differently.
So we usually do that when we're showing a side-by-side burn. Because we're building houses different, they're made differently. The spray foam becomes liquid gasoline when that gets hot enough. The stuff that we're putting into our homes, the light wood construction. There are different ways that we're building our homes.
So laminates versus
laminates,
okay.
The plastic blinds.
We're not necessarily building more fire-resistant homes.
Not necessarily, and then the stuff we're putting in our homes.
Stuff that we're putting in the home.
Comfy, foamy couches. If you think of the best way I did describe it is, you know, the little Disney chairs that most people have for their children. You buy them for $20 at Walmart. The foam ones, those are equivalent to having a cup of gasoline in your child's room if there's a fire.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's something.
Wow, that is something to.
So that's a visual, because most of us have them, have had them in
Compared
for
to
our
the
children.
old dense couches we used to
Horsehair.
have, that probably burned a lot slower.
They used to smolder, and they would smolder for hours. Now things are going very, very quick.
So thank you for giving us a very natural transition and segue into our next segment. We're going to go to a break just now, but when we come back, let's actually talk about sort of the top 10 list of things that are your most frequent fires that you get. I know we've pre-discussed a couple things that you wanted to mention, but really, I guess the takeaway is, you know, that famous saying, "It'll never happen to me," and maybe we can talk about that,
because it doesn't discriminate.
No, and you actually gave a really interesting comment that maybe you can share a little bit. People think that their home is that sanctuary, that safest place. I'll let you take us to a break with a thought.
That's where you feel the safest, and it's where you're at the greatest risk of having a fire, because that's where most fires happen, is in your home.
We'll be right back. And welcome back to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif, and we're pleased to be joined by Samantha Hoffman, who is the Public Fire and Life Safety Officer with Barrie Fire and Emergency Service. That is a mouthful.
It is a mouthful.
It's a long business card,
I
imagine. Thank you for joining us. Obviously on Hitting Home, as you know, folks, we want to talk about things that you're talking about around the kitchen table as it pertains to home ownership. And fire safety in general is certainly one of those things we want to make sure that we discuss. In our third segment, we're going to talk about some things in terms of the home inspection, et cetera, what to look out for. But right now we have an opportunity to really, while we have fire as top of mind in the public discussion, obviously what happened in the last couple of weeks in the city of Barrie, we have an opportunity to make sure that you as a information officer really in prevention are able to make sure that we're doing some things at home and things to keep top of mind at home.
Absolutely, and I think we brought a picture, but this was a fire that we had last night. The number one cause of fires in the home is unattended cooking. In an ideal world, anytime we cooked, we would be able to stand in front of that stove, the phone would never ring, the kids would never fight, nobody would come to the door, we'd just be, but we're so busy as a society, and it's really easy to
Distracted
put something
easily.
on the stove and forget about it. So I brought my oven mitt, not to take away anything hot, but if you have to leave the kitchen, if you can't turn that stove off, slide your oven mitt on. If you're in another room in the house and you're wearing an oven mitt,
That's
it's a pretty good visual
reminder.
that, hey, I'm cooking.
Interesting.
And-
Okay, this is kind of like putting the ribbon around your finger. Or
Exactly,
whatever.
and if you have one that doesn't match any of your outfit, it's a dead
Absolutely.
reminder. And the other thing that you can do for kitchen fires is the little space between your stove and your counter that does nothing except collect dust. If you slide a cookie sheet in there, it's a lid that fits all pots. If you come back into your kitchen and there's a fire,
Throw it
you
on
have
top.
that cookie sheet.
Very
You
good.
slide that on top. It's long, so you're away from the flames. Then you can, it'll knock the flames down. No peeking, because if you lift that up, that fire will
Starts
start.
again, yeah.
You turn it off, you slide it off the element, and then you still need to call us.
Excellent tip.
We're going to send one truck, no lights and sirens, so we won't embarrass you with the neighbors. But often that fire is out of the pot and a spark's getting up to the exhaust hood and is racing to your roof and you have no idea.
Let's talk about that. Bit of a segue here, but you mentioned to me about the embers.
Yes.
So talk about smoldering time and that kind of thing.
So the number one cause of fatal fires is cooking materials and
Yes.
smoking, so matches and lighters. And an ember or an ash, if it falls on upholstery or carpeting or bed linen or anything like that, it can smolder for up to 3 hours. So long before any flames are visible at all the toxins that are being produced in smoke are filling the room. And if somebody's sleeping, they're not going to wake up. We're going to have a fire fatality before we have the fire.
Wow. So repeat that one more time. Even though there are no flames, there can be a fire fatality long before the fire starts.
Long before you see the flames. It's because it's smoldering. It's deep-seated and it's in whatever the upholstered item is, or on the carpet, or garden mulch if it's outside.
So this actually comes from people who might have a cigarette while they stand outside, because a lot of people are conscious to not smoke inside the house now.
Yes.
They may or may not toss their cigarette into a flower bed.
Without putting it out completely.
Or a
And then
coffee can full of butts
Yes.
smolders for hours before it ever turns
Well, and then
into
they
a
go to
fire.
bed or they leave. They go to work because they don't smoke in their car either.
Or it gets caught up in the soffit or something like that.
And
right?
what happens is it burns, and it's only when the fire is fully involved and it's racing up the side of the house or breached the house that somebody sees it and calls 911. Meanwhile, it's been burning for hours.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, some of the, the list of common areas also tie in with the prevention methods you needed. We talked about some of the things Arif and I were talking about before we come in was, power bars, just the kind of bargain power bars, bargain lamps and lighting where you've got ineffective.
Looks pretty.
But they don't meet safety
You always want to
standards,
look
the
for
codes
something
from
that has a CSA or
CSA for sure.
ULC label on it. Anything that's electronic needs to have
For sure.
CSA.
And things like, the oil infusers. That's a common thing you're seeing in houses now, electronic things.
We are.
Yeah.
I haven't really seen a lot of
heard.
fires from that. We do see a lot of fires from extension cords. People
Yeah.
are using extension cords permanently, and those are temporary
Well, we
wiring
have
only.
so many electronic units with our entertainment systems, it's an octopus in behind there.
So you want to have a power bar with a
Yeah.
surge protector, so that if anything happens, it will shut off at the power bar.
Yeah.
But you want to spend a little bit of money and get a good power bar, not a dollar store.
Yeah.
So let's talk about two of those things actually, because you mentioned as well, people often use their extension cord as permanent fixture, and for example, to make it look nicer, they'll throw an area rug over it.
Well, they're conscious of a trip hazard, not a fire hazard. And what happens is it's under the rug or under the furniture, and they walk on it, and they wear down the
Wear it
protective wiring, and the protective coating, and the wiring is exposed, and we have a fire.
And then as far as, Mike, you're absolutely right. I mean, pick anybody's home entertainment center that may have a game console on there. It may have one of those boxes on there, like a movie box, an Android box or whatever, and you've got your home entertainment system. And so you've got a cluster there, and you may overload the actual fuse or breaker depending on what your house has. And the common thing to do is go and reset it or up the level, the rating
And
of
they
the fuse?
think,
What
I
happens?
fixed it, right? You,
Right.
you blow a fuse, you trip a breaker, you go down to your panel, you put it back, and all you've done is put a Band-Aid on it. You haven't actually checked to see why. And those fuses blow and the breakers trip because the wire's getting too hot. And we need to learn to trust the warnings that we're getting from our house.
Yes.
So when you're blowing fuses or tripping breakers, if it's happening all the time, you need an electrician in. If you have, often we'll be at fires where there's been an electrical fire, and the homeowner will tell us that, well, the lights have been flickering for a while, or
That's a short.
there was the plugs were loose. All of those are warnings.
There's a spark happening somewhere when that's happening.
and
Can
we
I-
need to trust that.
Yeah. Can I ask you, if you would, just walk us through the average home, townhouse, or whatever, however you see fit on this, and just kind of virtually point out some of the things we should be cautious about, like some of the things we can be doing at home right now to ensure that our home is a little safer than it was.
So I can't
Yesterday.
talk enough about smoke alarms, because these will give, they don't save, everyone says they save lives. What they do is they give you the time you need to escape,
Yeah.
if they work. They need to, you have to make sure that you've got a replace by date and that you're in date.
Yes.
Anything manufactured after 2006 had to have a replace by date on it.
Yeah.
If
And
you
that's where a
can't-
lot of people fail.
If you can't find a date, it's too old. And it doesn't matter if they're battery powered or hardwired. They have to be replaced every 10 years. You need a carbon monoxide alarm by your sleeping area. The number one mistake people make is they think their furnace is at risk, so they put it in the basement.
That's what we've all been told, is carbon monoxide will sit low, so keep your carbon monoxide detector low.
Carbon
It's not the
monoxide
case,
mixes
is it?
freely with the air. If your furnace is the culprit, it's going to push that carbon monoxide through all your
Through the
heating
vents.
vents. It's going to be everywhere. Your alarm in the basement, if it sounds, is not going to be loud enough to wake you up, because the carbon
Should have
monoxide is
one on
impairing
every
your
floor
thinking.
then.
Just by your sleeping area is the law. Best
Okay.
practice is on every floor.
Okay.
Smoke alarms are required by law on every story. We recommend that they be inside bedrooms, because like you said, we all put so much stuff in our bedrooms now.
Yeah.
And if you sleep with the door closed, anything in that room should malfunction. The smoke has to go to the ceiling, layer down underneath that closed door out to that one smoke alarm that's required by law.
Yeah.
So we have 1 minute. Smoke alarms in every bedroom.
A home escape plan.
Home escape plan. Let's talk about that. We got 1 minute.
So you need to make sure everybody in your house can hear the alarms and knows how to get out and where to go when they get outside. Has to be somewhere out front, so that when we pull up in our fire truck, we see you, we know that you're safe, so that we can deal with the fire. So you always want to have 2 ways out, know the sound of your smoke alarm, get out, stay out, and call 911.
Would you recommend, there's a lot of the portable ladders that you can hang out a window. Do you recommend people have those? You're in your bedroom and the fire's out in the mezzanine
It
outside your
depends on
window.
the home, of course. And then if you're going to buy a ladder, make sure it fits your windowsill. Make sure you can open your window, that it has safety feet on it so it's braced against the house, and then practice it. Don't buy one, throw it under the bed.
And learn it in that moment.
Learn
You're
it
gonna-
in an emergency.
When we come back, we're going to talk about some more safety tips and also a challenge that's going out all across Ontario. And welcome back to Hitting Home. We're here with Samantha Hoffman, who is the Fire and Life Safety Officer with Barrie Fire and Emergency Service.
You had to read it, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. There's a cheat here, by the way. Every one of our guests has a badge on the side of their shoulder. It's great, but thank you for joining us here. We're talking about, as part of the element, making sure that your home is safe, and making sure that as part of the home buying experience, you're aware of what to look for and things to do and things not to do, and the common things that get overlooked. So
Yes.
thanks for joining us.
It'll help us all sleep better too, knowing all these things, I would think.
After, just before the break, we were talking about some of the most common causes and also what you can do. Really, one of the questions I wanted to know is sleep with the door shut or sleep with the door open?
So I like sleeping with the door shut, but only if you have smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms inside your bedroom. So that gives you that extra bit of protection. It does stop smoke and heat. But you also will know as soon as the fire happens. And the interconnected smoke alarms are the way to go. Whether you can get battery-powered ones now, so that if a fire happens in the basement, the whole house knows that the fire is happening. So you get the utmost time to escape.
Yes, and there's always sales on these things. It's not like you've got to, remortgage your house to fire protected. I mean, various stores have.
They can be pricey,
Smoke and
but it's
carbon.
well
They
worth.
can be.
It's well worth
And
the
you want to
money.
make sure you get a good one.
So let's
Absolutely.
touch on that
Reliable.
just for a second, because we've talked about home ownership, but we really haven't talked about tenants. And this can be a sensitive topic, obviously. However, the price of renters insurance and content insurance, there are often cases where a fire happens, the landlord is covered, the homeowner is covered, but under Ontario law, it is up to the tenant to provide their own content insurance. And
good investment.
it is a good investment, but perhaps you can touch on that. What
We
are you seeing in terms of stats?
We
and that?
have seen a lot of tenants do not have tenant insurance. And we've contacted a few different insurance companies, and it's about $25 a month for content insurance only. For any students that are away from home, if you're away from home you're at school, it's a
Added
rider
to-
on your parents' insurance, so it's $20 a year, which is not much.
Wow, I didn't know that.
People need to think about that. But one thing, you need tenant insurance, but you also need to know as a tenant that you have a responsibility to notify your landlord in writing if your smoke and carbon monoxide alarms are not working.
Yes.
So it's their
It's not up to the
responsibility to
landlord,
provide
yes.
it, but it's your responsibility to make sure it's working and to let them know if it's not.
So
Yes.
is there something, though, that says a landlord is obligated to do an inspection once a year on their own premises?
Yes.
But it's
they have
still
to
your
provide it and
responsibility.
they have to check them. But if anything happens, you have a responsibility to let them know if it's not
Yeah,
working.
that's condominiums as well, I believe.
Yes.
Condo corporation
It depends
does
on if
annual or semi-annual inspections.
they have to do annual
Yeah.
inspections, but you're in the house all the time. You
Yeah.
know if
It's
something
ultimately
happens.
up to you to make sure they're working.
It's up
Yes.
to you, and you shouldn't sleep anywhere without working smoke
No.
and CO alarms.
So you mentioned, for example, people going over for sleepovers, and not a bad idea for a parent, to say, well, sure, I'd love to have Johnny go for a sleepover. I want to know that you've got working smoke detectors.
Absolutely, and then when you're having kids come to your house, let them hear what your smoke alarm sounds like, and tell them where your meeting place is, so that they know if anything happens, how to escape. If there's a
What's
fire.
interesting? Whenever we have a public meeting, whether it's through the city or associations get together and have a convention, 9 times out of 10, if not 100 times out of 100, I've seen the MC or the host say, "Welcome to our show. Before we get started, bathrooms over here, fire escape is over here." What's the difference? I mean, there really is no difference. You're having a guest in your house. It seems a little awkward,
Yes.
Yeah.
but so is a fire. So I'd rather let people know. I think that's a great piece of advice.
Absolutely.
And you had mentioned earlier during the break, Realtor that you know as well, and what they are doing proactively to
So
help. in the
it's
cause.
actually pretty
Tell us a bit
exciting.
about
We
that.
we partnered with David Vicentin, who is the celebrity realtor from Love It or List It, but he actually is a realtor in Simcoe County, has been for years.
The other celebrity realtor.
The other celebrity realtor. Sorry, Mike. And he's challenged all realtors in Canada that every time you go into a house, check the smoke and CO alarms, make sure that they're not out of date, push the button and see that they're working. So we've had a lot of realtors jump on board in Barrie. The Ontario Real Estate Association is working with the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs, so they're coming out with some partnership. Some of the local businesses in Barrie are offering realtors discounts on smoke and CO alarms if they want to use them as gifts. And one of the
Closing gifts or-
closing
yeah.
gifts or listing gifts, and one of the realtors was at Costco and was buying a bunch for a home that they were listing. And somebody behind them in the line was asking about, why are you buying so many alarms? And she turned around and took the opportunity to educate them on smoke alarms. And then the
Great. That's
cashier
great.
learned. And that's what it should all be
Yeah.
about. It's about partnerships. It's
Yes.
about empowering everybody because people don't know.
And that opportunity, I think you were using the number in Ontario last year, 450
486,000 homes are projected to be sold in Canada in
Yeah.
2018.
In 2018,
And we
so
have the potential to have
that many opportunities.
486,000 safer families.
Now,
That's
take
great.
that piece of statistics and discuss the fact that this year actually we're up in terms of fire fatalities in Ontario.
Last I checked, we were 5 fatalities more this year at this time now than last year. So it's been a really
Does
tragic.
more fatal fires directly mean more fires in general, or
I think it goes back to how the homes are being built, so that there's not necessarily more fires, but your chances of dying in a fire are pretty high.
Tell us a little bit about the programs you have set up for the public here right now that you're.
So any public group, we would love to go out and talk. Like we've done a lot of residential programs where we'll go into homes and talk to the homeowners, or high rises if there's a gathering, church groups, Rotary Club, any opportunity that we can to talk about fire safety and to help
Schools,
people. Schools,
particularly.
absolutely. We have great information on our website, which is www.barrie.ca/BFES. It's all about prevention, detection, escape, and we'll tell you what you can do to prevent it. We'll tell you what you can do to know you have an alarm, and if after all your best efforts, what steps you need to take to have an escape plan so that you and your family can survive.
I've got 2 quick questions before we got to wrap the show up. First of all, thank you, obviously, great information here. You're going to also, on your website, you have a list. You have a list of things that people can look for in terms of what are the chief causes
Yes.
and what to do. So
Yeah,
that's
the
on the
fire
website.
hazards,
Fire
yes.
hazards, great. Let's talk about home inspections just for about 30 seconds about what they cover and what they don't cover and how the public should be aware, and maybe you have an example.
So there isn't a licensing or a standard body for home inspectors. So each home inspector is going to do their own, whatever their expertise is. And usually in our experience with that last line, it says that they don't look at smoke and CO alarms. We did an after the fire blitz, knocked on a door, brand new homeowner said, "Oh no, I'm good, I just bought the house, I had a home inspection." We said, "Can we come in and check anyways?" We went in, the alarms were 30 years old.
Yeah.
So don't trust somebody else with your life
No.
safety.
You're moving into that house for the first time, check all those
Check the
things for
date,
yourself. Double
push the
check.
button,
Yeah.
make sure they work, make sure you're protected.
Now, traditionally, again, while the topic's hot, maybe that's a bad cliche. Anyway, the point being is
Piping
that
hot.
piping hot, the fire service often does a blitz in the neighborhood just to see what's going on, and your data is pretty staggering, actually. When you knock on the door, the person on the other side of the door shouldn't be afraid of you coming into their house. You're there to provide life-saving
Absolutely.
information.
We're not there for penalties. We're not there. Usually, when it's education, when we do an after the fire blitz, they're always happy to see us, and people love to have us come into their home, and they invite us in to show us alarms that they've taken down a year ago for painting. They don't even realize that they've taken them down, or they don't have
They
them.
burnt the toast and
It's
turned it off
amazing.
and never
They
turned it
think
back
they
on.
are protected, and they're not.
And people who bought a home, they can call you freely and say, "Do you mind just to walk through a house with us?" That's your
Anytime.
job.
You can call us at 705-728-3199, and we will have someone from fire prevention answer your questions or point you in the right direction.
Where can we go online to learn more about?
We're out of time. It's on the screen. It was on the screen, Barrie Fire
.ca.
Yeah. We are
Okay.
out of time, folks. Thank you very much for watching. Samantha, thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
having us on.
Thank you for having
And
me.
Thank
we
you
look forward to
for
seeing
help
you again.
coming in and for everything you do.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.